Hello everybody, Mike here at Game From Scratch, and I stumbled across one of those tools that it just confounded me, it shocked me. I was amazed by how cool this actually was, and it was Vectary. What is Vectary? Well, you can think of it like a 3D modeling application. You're kind of underselling a bit by calling it that. It is really easy to use though. So if you are looking for a way to create simple 3D model scenes, this is the perfect application for you, with one possible exception. If you're not into cloud-based applications, this one runs in the browser. But don't let that put you off. It is still a very impressive application, and I really think you should check it out. So stick with me for a bit, and maybe I'll wow you a little bit as well. So Vectary is available at vectary.com. That's A-R-Y. Of course, I'll toss that link down below. And the weirdest thing is they don't advertise this at all for game development. Like, this is all aimed at AR content, Facebook, Snapchat, e-commerce, 3D websites, 3D text. Going down here, they actually advertise low poly, but they don't really kind of get into where game development, which is really strange because this is a huge opportunity that they're missing out on. Because this tool is, like, as I mentioned, there's not a lot of simple 3D level content creation tools out there, and doing this in Max, Maya, Blender, etc. is very complicated. So having an easy tool to do that stuff, as well as a full 3D modeler on top, is perfect for smaller game developers for sure. Now let's talk very quickly about price before we jump in, and I think the pricing model is very, very reasonable. Now at the free tier, and that's what I'm demonstrating today, the biggest limitations are 10 projects. So if you have a whole bunch more projects on the go, you're going to have to start deleting them. And so if you're using this as your primary content creation tool, obviously that is going to turn into a bit of a problem. So at the next tier up, you get 100 projects. The other thing is you also get different 3D exports. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but it's not a huge deal. And then your next tier up, you're looking at $50 a month with unlimited projects. And the cool thing is with these two, is you actually also get collaborative development. So 2 people can log into the same scene, or 3 people, 4 people, I don't know, however many it is. And you can actually work together to make things work. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at Vectary. Here's a simple 3D city scene I created earlier on. They've integrated tightly with Google Poly, so all of the Google Poly assets are available here. I'm not sure the licensing on that though, so do be sure to, dig into that before you use this for a commercial game. And I think that's just true of using Google Poly assets in general, but you're going to see the way they integrated it is very, very nice. So here's a scene I created in the past. It took me about 4 minutes, I think. Your navigation is pretty straightforward. Right mouse button to pan, middle mouse button to zoom, left mouse button to orbit. And 3D scene is pretty simple. The interface itself collapses down in less in use. So you'll see over here we have some settings for rendering. And in the render settings, we've got settings for the environment. We've got some filter and special effects we can do. We can do HDR setup. So this is mostly for if you're generating, a still frame that you want to render out. So like if you're doing a 2-dimensional background or something, you can render out the results here, ultra resolution, and then you can export them out. Now, speaking of export, this is really important because this is how this is going to fit into your art asset. So somehow, if you're making a game, you need to get things in and you need to get things out. And the important thing is here, let's move over to the 3D side of the equation. You will see the default, so the free version has glTF export, and that's the big one. That is the new upcoming open source format for model exchange. And it's supported by almost every one of the major game engines right now, from Unity to Godot to Unreal Engine, all support glTF in some way, shape, or form, with support improving over time. So that one is a biggie. Now again, if you want to have Collada and OBJ formats, you do need to upgrade to that $19 tier. But for the most part, glTF should do it for you. Now in terms of bringing assets in, we head on over here to the hamburger. We click that and we go to import. And you will see bringing assets in is a drag and drop experience. And again, they support glTF, but even in the free version, they support OBJ and Collada formats, as well as STL, JPEG, PNG, and SVG. So if you want to bring assets in, you can. You want to bring assets out, you can. And that is what makes it genuinely useful to everybody, even as a free project. So that's it for this stuff. You can also share out your projects, and you can also collaborate. I lost the integration, but you can collaborate and hook up with things like Sketchfab and a few other websites. But I'll close down the parameter, so see, if you don't need it, you can get rid of it. Over here, we have another pop out, and this is basically your scene structure. So everything I've got in my scene, so there's a shop, you'll see it highlights the shop as I mouse over it. So this is basically your scene graph. You could create a new object this way, but now we kind of get to the guts of Vectary. So we don't really need this guy. So Yeah, so when you hover over, you've got a control over here so you can duplicate and delete objects that exist in your world. But what you would generally do, so we don't really need that guy up either, so we have our maximize workspace, and I'll turn rendering off so that it's not chewing away back there. We go into the 3D assets panel, and this is where that Google Poly integration comes in. So you've got all kinds of, if you need to have buildings to place in your scene, you can basically, I've already got a hotel, we already got that guy. So let's just do a search, find what other buildings there are. Building. Be nice if I knew how to spell. Building. And it's going to bring up all the different buildings that I can find. So, hey, our scene needs a lighthouse. So we'll bring the lighthouse in. There's the placement for it. And then you see you have this 3D manipulator for placement. And that's it. You're done. That's all it takes. And on top of that, there are snapping features, so you can have it, automatically snap to your grid. You can also, over here, if you right-click, you've got various different options. You can also zoom in on an object by hitting A, and it will zoom into that particular object in the scene. Pretty cool stuff. And then any of the objects or the geometry you've seen here, you can also go into a polygon editing mode or a model editor and make changes to it. And we'll see that in a second. So on top of bringing in 3D assets and placing them in the world, so you see you've got scale with the squares, placement with the arrows, and then you've got circles here for your various different axis rotations, like that. And then Control Z is there, so if you make a mistake, you don't like it, you're done. So you can see how this could be a very quick tool for creating or prototyping levels. And even at just that level, there is use here. But we move on. We've also got materials. So you notice here, I did a pre-record of this one, and I made, these were previously actual concrete roads, and then I replaced the material on them. So here you go. There's stylized roof material, and I'll drop that on my road. And there you see. So that's how you can texture. And again, there is a whole wealth of textures built in, and they're searchable as well. So, yeah, it's pretty easy and simple to work with. Next up, we go into lighting. There's a bunch of pre-configured rigs for lighting. For example, here is a spotlight. Just drag and drop it into your scene, and it creates something just like this guy right here. You'll notice the same manipulator, but this is an active spotlight in the scene. And as I move it around, you will see in real-time feedback that spotlight changing. So we've got hemispherical lighting, rectangular lighting, directional lighting, tube lighting, spot lighting, and spherical lighting for creating the lights in your scene. Next up, we have environments. So you've actually got HDR environments that you can bring in and configure. So if we go back over here to your render settings, pop out. So while we're here under render, I don't want to turn you on. I just want to select this tab. You will see, don't need actions. I got a spotlight selected. So we've got, here are the settings for that spotlight, and you can modify them here. Now I actually want to do the scene. So here I am. I'm just in the entire environment settings, and you'll see I have HDR preset options. So I can bring in any one of these to the scene, and that will do the lighting. So we've got HDR lighting kind of built in and integrated right out of the hop. And then finally, you've got add-ons. These are for placing a 2D image in the scene or a billboard, and for pasting 3D text in the scene. So if for some reason you wanted to add some text here, you can. Like that. Of course, we can scale it somewhere. Where's my font size? I'm not sure where it's being set. And we could change the color out there. You'll see it's got nettleness, so this is actually full PBR material going on. Or you can bring in a texture for it. I wonder if I can actually drop one of these materials directly on. Yep. So it has full integration with the material support that is built in. So pretty cool stuff. Even just at this level alone, Vectary is genuinely useful. If you are looking for a tool just for creating simple 3D levels or for creating prototypes, I can't think of too many better than this. But now let's move on to actually creating your own objects in the scene. And this is really impressive. This is where we move beyond being a basic tool, though, to a more advanced tool. But there's a full 3D modeler built in here as well. So I'm at my dashboard. I'm going to create a brand new 3D design. We'll let it do its thing. And then I'm going to click here and go draw your own. So now we're making our own entity for the world. This is where you would create like those buildings we saw earlier on. So now what you do, this interface is very minimal and kind of confusing at first. Come on down here and you can pick your primitives right here. So let's create a cube in the world. So we're going to draw a box, and then you just kind of draw the corners like that, and then draw the depth like that. Then it's going to pop up this kind of cool config wheel for the primitive that we just did, and we can use this to configure individual aspects. So I could click on width and then change that parameter. And when I let go, we get the wheel back. So if I want to change depth, it's a pretty cool tool. It integrates well. Now I find on occasion it gets stuck there, but that's about it. So now what I've done is I've right-clicked in the scene. You'll see here we've also got full snapping. We can fit once again, so if I hit A, it'll converge around that guy. But now we've got all the various different modeling tools available to us. You'll see up here we have your selection tools, so marquee, lasso, paint, select. Pretty much all the selection tools you get in your major applications are available here. We can also switch between point, line, or edge, and face. So I'm now in face select mode. So I can pick one particular face. So I've got that face selected. And now we go down here, you'll see we've got the various different operations that we can do. So we see we can cut or multiple cut our object. We can extrude, which I'll do in a second. And again, notice the letter to the right of it. So that is the hotkey that does the same thing. So extrusion is what you use heavily in box modeling. You can bridge between two surfaces, bevel, collapse, make circle, and then we can get into mesh tools. I'll come back to that in a second. So here I'm going to go ahead and do an extrude. So now the extrude select, you see this arrow popped out. And there we go. We extruded. That's it. That's all it takes. And then we're going to right click again. And now we've got the selector up. And I'm going to just, oops. By the way, selector, you can right click and pivot to change the orientation of it. But this is one of those things I have found very confusing. So now I'm still in, I get stuck in extrude mode. So I want to switch to select mode. There. So that is a full-blown modeling environment going on here. Same way I can switch over here to select edges. I'm going to select that guy, hit shift and select that guy. So I've got this continue, I think it's shift. Yep, so I got those two edges selected. Come on down here to the bevel and grab that corner. And you can bevel in, just like you would with any 3D modeling applications. And truth of the matter is, extrusions, bevels, subdivisions are pretty much the crux of what you use to do 99% of polygonal modeling. So this base level of tools is kind of mostly what you need. You can switch between textured, shaded, and wireframe rendering. You can switch out how your normals work. You can flip your normals or unify them. You can turn smoothing on and off. So smoothing is like subdivision surface, so you can see there's the end result. So let's turn that back off again. That's how you would make like a higher resolution version by basically you create the low polygon cage and then smooth it into something that looks more organic. And then we're going to finally look at mesh tools. So I click this guy and then you're going to see all the various different mesh tools that are available. So we can do things like smooth, subdivide flat, subdivide interpolated, subdivide approximated. Not sure what that is. We got polygonal welding tools here. We can spherify our asset. Oh, I've got things selected. So here, let's do a marquee select, grab everything, and then we'll do that spherify. I love spherify. I think it's something that should be built into every 3D model tool because sometimes you just want to make things more round. So you see you've got various different options available here. So we can go back to more cubish. Actually not working. So let's triangulate for tessellating your mesh. All of the tools you would expect for 3D modeling are actually here. It's kind of impressive that they've put this all in here. And yeah, again, this is more advanced level stuff that, you know, if you want to go beyond just consuming other people's content and you want to start creating your own, this is actually a pretty straightforward modeling environment. And then when you are done with it, you click Done Editing, and that object is available in your scene. Now, I'm not sure how you would make it available as an asset. So if you go to 3D Assets, I don't know how to populate it in. I'm more than 100% certain that there's a way to do it so that you can instantiate your object in other scenes, but I'm not entirely certain how to do it. If you want to go back into edit mode, you just right click and do edit geometry, and you are back in the 3D modeler. So I gotta say, Vectary, it's impressive. I'm genuinely quite impressed with what this guy is capable of doing. It's just, it somewhat blew my mind that this tool works as well as it does, as easily as it does, with as many features as it does, for what I consider a pretty reasonable price tag. So even if you just want to come in and you want to create a game level, you can come on in here. You can create up to 10 of them using all their built-in assets and export it as glTF, and it's a genuinely useful product to you for completely free. I don't know if 100, if you're going to use this like to commit to creating your own game, if 100's enough, or you're going to get stuck having to go up to that $49 tier. That's a bit questionable. And I do find a few of the usability issues there. Like it should be more seamless switching between a tool such as extrude and scaling and translation and such. That's one of those areas where I've stumbled a bit, and I can find this guy on occasion a little frustrating. It's sometimes this orientation, its default orientation, comes out a little wonky, but for the most part, it's just it's a really cool tool. So I figured I'd share it here. Hopefully you guys are as impressed with this as I am. Hopefully the fact that it runs in a browser doesn't turn you off. And yeah, that's Vectary.com. Again, link will be down below. Let me know what you think of it. Talk to you all later, and goodbye.